Hi everyone following my page. So this is the second live I'm going to do. I'm going to start with a question. What is the map of womanhood? And yeah, let's start there, shall we, before we go on to have a sharing about the different thresholds. So I'm doing these lives at random times because I have to fit it in around my family life and my work. So yeah, you have to bear with me with that. So let's start with what is the map of womanhood? So it's quite a lengthy conversation to be had. That's why I do introductions to the map of womanhood. But I want to share here that the map is the reason why I call it a map for a start is that it's not a finished piece of work. We're mapping it together as women. So every time I do an introduction to the map of womanhood, when I sit with women in circle, I haven't done one online yet, but I will. But when I sit with women in circle, there's so much to the map that we are growing together and learning together, because each woman's story is relevant to how the map evolves. So that's why I call it a map, for want of a better word, because we're mapping evolution and we're mapping it together through sharing our stories and through coming together in circle to remember the map, because it's a really old remembering in our bones and our blood, that is ancient, but it's also an evolutionary process, and it's a journey that we're all on together, and we need each other's stories, because when we're mapping it, it's like we're taking all the threads of our sisterhood and we're weaving it together to find the path of evolution and to regenerate culture. So we're mapping a new culture, this in my reality, in the work that I do. So it's called the life spiral in other works, and I'm going to really mention here a beautiful elder of mine and mentor called Gail Burkett. She's written a book called Nine Passages and Soul Stories, and the first book that she ever wrote that I picked up and read was called Voices of the Elders, Voices of the Elders, A Girl's Path to Womanhood. I think that's what it was called. But I'm going to put the links to these books on my page, because they are profound books from a really beautiful, wise elder, Gail, who set me off on this journey, which I will talk about at some point. It was when my daughter was age 8, and it set me off on this journey, and she introduces it as the life spiral, and so I'm really honouring her and her teachings and recommend that you buy her books. For me, as my work has evolved with my shamanic path, training, learnings, teachings, so for those of you who don't know, I've been training in shamanism for 30 years, and I have a school of shamanism. So for me, the way of recovering ourselves around the life spiral was automatically and instinctively by using shamanic techniques. So then I started to do this work with women, and I started to understand that it wasn't a finished journey, and that there's many layers to the map. There is the life spiral, it is the journey from birth to death, and all of the 9 thresholds that we pass through as women on that journey from birth till death. So that's the life spiral that Gail introduces and works with, and it's really profound. And I started working with her work with a group of women when my daughter was 10, to help, because I wanted to start a girls' circle for my eldest daughter. And as soon as I started working with those women, I started to bring in my own shamanic work to that process. And as I went on that journey for 10 years, I started to call it a map, the Map of Womanhood, because I started to work with it on lots of different levels, lots of different layers. So bringing it back to my work, which is the core of it is soul mending, and which comes from the ancient art, soul retrieval. So it's about healing the fragmentation that we experience through the lack of culture that recognizes and holds rites of passage ceremonies. And the enormity of that is explained in my introductions to the Map of Womanhood. I mean, women have to record me talking because it's so deep and so profound when we start to understand the level of soul loss that we're experiencing as a culture, which is trauma, cultural trauma and cultural soul loss, fragmentation that we're experiencing all of the time because we don't have a culture of rites of passage ceremonies. And so this map of womanhood is a way of recovering ourselves and regenerating our culture. So it began with me wanting girls' circles for my daughters. So I started working with women and working with girls and going on that experience of recovering rites of passage ceremonies for our collective daughters. Which then led on to the understanding of how we map this journey to womanhood by recovering ourselves on the inner first, because like Clarissa Pincoles Estes says in her book Women with the Wolves, we cannot initiate young women if we haven't been initiated ourselves. So the Map of Womanhood is about initiating ourselves on the inner so that we can begin to initiate others on the outer. So the understanding from the shamanic perspective is that each one of these 9 thresholds from birth to death is a dark night of the soul, a death, which then brings us through into the rebirth of ourselves, the resurrection of ourselves, and our opportunities for that level of the conscious path of living and dying, which is integration, which is the integration of ourselves, because we're fragmented from not moving through these 9 thresholds consciously. So our birth wasn't conscious, our mid-child wasn't conscious, our teenagers weren't conscious, our mothering, our young woman years weren't conscious, our the fullness of the summer of our lives in the what we call spinning woman rites of passage wasn't conscious, our menopause wasn't conscious, elderhood isn't conscious, and death isn't conscious, because we've lost our ability to hold rites of passage ceremonies and to understand what they are. So the first thing I want to say here as we go on is that we cannot, I'm really clear about this from my experience, 30 years of shamanic training and 10 years of working with rites of passage deeply, is that we cannot hold rites of passage ceremonies in our communities, in our villages, in our culture, if we haven't received that level of initiation on the inner. So the journey of the Map of Womanhood is going back and catching up on those rites of passage ceremonies through deep shamanic practices, which then has the knock-on effect of regenerating our culture, mending the soul of the village. For those of you who know, I use that word. So my Map of Womanhood school mends the soul of the village. So we cannot come together in right relationship as a community, as a village, and expect to be able to hold the births of our children to hold the journey to womanhood of our collective daughters, we cannot then hold this journey of our collective daughters on their journey to womanhood. We cannot hold our death of our maiden as we become a mother. We cannot hold our journey through menopause for each other in our villages, in our communities, if we haven't done that work on the inner, because it takes a huge amount of recovery, which is actually a very beautiful process of recovering our soul loss. So yeah, I just wanted to really dive deep into this experience of journeying around the map, because it's a really important process, because our bodies are going through it whether we like it or not. So each one of these thresholds from birth to death, the 9 passages, that Gail talks about in her book. So birth, mid-child, first blood, first flight leaving home, spinning woman, which is in the summer of your life, the doing phase of your life, menopause, elder, and death. That journey that I'm talking about in the Map of Womanhood is a spiritual journey. Our bodies are going through this process of change, the hormonal journey, but alongside the hormonal journey is the spiritual awakening, the spiritual journey of awakening, the soul, the journey of the soul. So the hormones, the journey of the soul, and the potential for spiritual awakening all together on the different layers of the map. So that's why I'm saying we're mapping it together, because I don't feel like we've ever been to the place that we're going to before. So if we look back at traditional cultures that have been working with rites of passage, they really understand the process of death and rebirth and the metamorphosis that we go through over and over again in our lives, like the amount of times that we've had to die to rebirth ourselves. So each one of these 9 thresholds is a metamorphosis process. It's the caterpillar to the butterfly. It's the death and rebirth of ourselves. And how we navigate the death and rebirth of ourselves is through ceremony and through rites of passage. And we have to integrate. So we let die. So say we're talking about it, for most of you that will be listening to this, most of my students are working with me because they want to work with girls on their journey to womanhood, or they want to work with death, because those are the 2 main branches of my work. And so if we take those 2 thresholds for us to look at now, this journey from girl to woman is the biggest metamorphosis ever, right? Along with elderhood and death. It's like that process, if we just look at this one threshold, never mind the other 8, is such a huge metamorphosis. We literally are the caterpillar becoming a liquid inside a cocoon to find our adult wings. And that level of dying that it takes for the caterpillar to become a liquid in the chrysalis is so magnificent, but also I can't imagine what the caterpillar's going through inside that chrysalis to form those butterfly wings. It's immense, isn't it? Like, that caterpillar's completely gone on a lot of levels, but the soul of the caterpillar is still there, but it completely changes into a being with wings. So we can take the teenager. If you take your daughter, so for those of you who are listening to my work because you have a daughter or you want to work with girls, take that process of the teenager on that level, the brain is rewiring. The change from the first moments of adolescence of breast buds and pubic hair to the adult wings that form at first flight, that's such a huge process. And it is in the shamanic perception of the universe, the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul means that we need to completely die. We need to completely surrender. We need to completely let go of all that we've ever known, all that we thought we were doing, all that we thought we were, and just let it all go, our childhood, to rebirth ourselves into a completely new version of ourselves, which is the grace of who we're becoming as an adult. And so you can see how the hormones are the signal for the spiritual journey, the spiritual awakening of that soul. So on a bodily level, the hormones are waking up, bringing the blood, bringing the woman's body, and then the process of separation from your family and movement out into the world. There's so much in it, I can't go into it right now. You need to come to one of my workshops because I'll be here for hours. But that process of breast buds, pubic hair, blood, finding out who you're becoming, separating from your family, the brain rewiring into the young woman that you're becoming, just like the caterpillar to the butterfly, requires that cocoon, requires us to completely be in the dark night of the soul, just like the caterpillar is wise enough to know that it needs to create a cocoon around it. Where is the cocoon of the teenager? Where is the cocoon of your daughter? This is the holding of the village to create that. It's the holding of the village to allow that, so that the teenager's wings can unfold into the woman that she's becoming. It's the hormonal journey, but it's also the sacred journey of the soul. But on another level, it's the awakening of the consciousness of the soul to who the girl, the woman, who she truly is. And that requires dying, complete surrender, and it requires also the integration of your childhood. I wonder what the caterpillar is doing while it's becoming liquid in the cocoon. Is it integrating its life so far so that the wings can form perfectly with the necessary shape, the necessary colours, the camouflage, the flight? These are the necessary becoming of those wings, perfectly designed for that butterfly to give of itself to life, to find its purpose as a butterfly, its own unique set of wings and its own unique colours, because that is where it's going to be in the ecosystem of Gaia. So let's take this miracle of nature that is a rites of passage threshold, change and evolution, death and resurrection, and place it into our hearts for our own inner girl and who she was becoming. When we look at our daughters and we see that they are going through this magnificent unfolding and unfurling of their woman wings, what does it take to allow them to find their own unique colours, patterns and shape of the woman that they're becoming, so that they can give of themselves to life and find their place within the natural ecosystem of Gaia, within the village, within the community, within the belonging that they need to feel, the oneness, who they truly are, So this is me just talking about one threshold. We go through 9. So how are we supposed to be able to hold rites of passage ceremonies in our village when we haven't even done that on the inner? When we haven't even gone through the process of recovering ourselves, healing our fragmentation, and going back to those moments where our wings were trying to form and unfold, and we were trying to become all that we are as our bodies changed and our hormones changed. 9 times we have to go back and we have to recover that, because we cannot understand and know the enormity of what it takes to integrate and to let die all of those old versions of ourselves, so we can resurrect ourselves into the new version of ourselves. Each time, 9 times, resurrecting ourselves, integrating who we were before, so we can become all that we are. So yeah, what it takes to mend the soul of the village, what it takes to hold each other in rites of passage, this is what the map is. This is what we're mapping. This is what we're becoming as a village, as a community of women together holding rites of passage ceremonies. So yeah, we go. So this map is the journey of evolution, of death and rebirth, over and over again, from the moment we're born to the moment that we die, which has the potential for a huge growth in consciousness, for us to find our rightful place within the ecosystem of Gaia, our sense of belonging, and our regeneration of culture. And we need each other to do that. That's why we're mapping it. We need all of the threads of our unique journey to be woven together into the rich tapestry of a future, a culture, a regeneration of culture, and an evolution of ourselves as a species. So the recovery of our rites of passage ceremonies has the potential to heal cultural and generational trauma, and also soul loss that we're experiencing. So when we're looking at the map, we're looking at a map for healing trauma, for regenerating culture, for healing our rites of passage ceremonies, for recovering our inner girl, for having a conscious death, for having an ecstatic menopause, for being able to birth our children in a good way, for being able to let go of our childhood. There's so much in the map, and so that's why we need to be together around the map as women. We need to sit together and share our stories. And I call a big part of this work healing the maiden, restoring elderhood, because it's not until we go back and we look at the rites of passage of adolescence that we can move forward into our elder years in a good way, because we cannot become the wise elders of our communities if we haven't healed our inner teenager and our inner girl. So as I'm going along on these lives, I'm really starting to really feel the enormity of what I'm sharing, because normally I only do this in a training program. So I am going to offer up a way for people to ask me questions on these lives. So the next live I'm going to do will be births, and I will post on my Map of Womanhood School page when I'm going to go live with the first threshold of birth, so that you can ask me questions, because it's easier for me if people ask me questions, because there's so much I could say and there isn't enough space on these lives for me to say it all, because there's so many threads. There'll be those of you who want to work with the map around death doulaing, around births, helping each other birth children, around working with girls, There'll be those of you who want to understand more about the menopause, and there'll be those of you who want to learn about how to hold rites of passage ceremonies. So yeah, let's open up questions so that I can hold the thread of what's needed in each live. So thank you for listening. I'm going to finish the live there. And if you've got any questions that you want me to address in the next live about the Map of Womanhood, then please put your questions on my Map of Womanhood Facebook page. Thanks everyone, bye.